Um, so yeah, Westchester is near and dear to my heart. When one funny thing about municipal government is we're very obsessed with our little fiefdoms. So when I talk about the borough, it's really just the 1.8 square miles of Westchester. But um, you know, Westchester is an amazing town. What I love about it is you can be in the middle of downtown, walk to everything. That lifestyle I enjoyed for 12 years, and then you hop in the car, and 3 or 4 minutes later, you're at Stroud Preserve or something like that. And it's just, to me, it's the best of both worlds. So when this job came up, I jumped at an opportunity to do it. My career has been in energy. I worked at a nonprofit, worked for a public company in Great Valley briefly. Then I worked for another real estate developer in Philadelphia and commuted. I was that person. I always wondered who drove the Schuylkill Expressway every day, and that was me for about 3.5 years. And then this job popped up, and opportunity to do sustainability work in town I love was a no-brainer. Um, what I do in my professional capacity for the borough, all things energy and environmental related. I am what we call a staff liaison to three of the boards and commissions for the borough, Sustainability Advisory Committee, our Tree Commission, and our newly formed Transportation Advisory Committee. These are groups of volunteers that have been appointed by Borough Council to work on these issues. There's a lot of overlap, honestly, between Sustainability and Transportation Advisory Committee. The Transportation Advisory Committee is relatively new. I mentioned that they sort of grew out of this. There's been some historic effort to get a railroad reestablished to downtown Westchester. Great idea, love it in theory, but regional rail is hanging on by a thread as it is. That track is almost 100 years old. The cost to bring that up to federal standards, which you would need to run any sort of commuter rail down to Wawa and from there to Philadelphia, is a lot of money. It's not something the borough would take on ourselves, but there is a group that's working on that. But having seen that work, people started looking around and saying, well, what about everyone else? So cars haven't made, right? Um, we got a group working on the railroad. That's great. But what about walking, biking, public transportation, things like that? So, and the tree commission, this is fairly new for me, but obviously Westchester wouldn't be Westchester without our tree-lined streets and our big parks. We have 13 parks in 1.8 square miles. There's only one neighborhood in the very far southwest corner of town that cannot walk to a park within like 7 or 8 minutes. There's this national standards for being a walkable city, and one of the criteria is how far it is to your nearest park on foot. Um, but trees are, they're funny because it's sort of this communal asset, but they're very much on private property. So there's efforts and policy to protect them on the streets. They're all planted in the right of way, which is it's this funny little space that's been carved out. It's your property, but the local government can run power lines and sewer pipes and plant trees on it. And so you can't cut down a street tree without the borough's permission. And there's some contentious meetings, let me tell you. I manage the borough's stormwater fee. This was implemented actually almost 10 years ago now. It's one of the first in the state. Um, Stormwater fees, you may have heard them referred to as rain taxes, but it's another way for a municipality to raise revenue. The borough went through a period where there was not a property tax increase for over 10 years. Friendly PSA taxes do not increase with inflation. If you look at the assessed value of your home, it's worth a giggle. It's probably about the assessed value of your home is probably a quarter of what it's actually worth. So that number is meaningless. It's detached from reality. It's detached from um, increases in value to that. So the only way for a municipality to keep up with inflation on the cost size is to increase the millage of your tax rate. Another way to do that is to create a stormwater fee. This was done in that period when no property taxes occurred for a really long time. Um, Something unique about the borough, challenge for us is one third of that assessed value. I just said that assessed value is totally made up number, and it's probably about a quarter of what your home is actually worth. So you take all that assessed value, and a third of that actually belongs to tax exempt properties in our little 1.8 square miles. The university is a big piece of that. All of our schools and churches are the Chester County Hospital. Um, Great institutions, love that, but it's hard for us to balance a budget when only two-thirds of properties are paying for your budget. So, long way of saying a stormwater fee was actually implemented to raise some revenue from tax exempt entities, including really the university. It's currently in front of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court as is it a tax? Is it a fee? And oral arguments were over a year ago, and we're waiting on that announcement, but that will have repercussions for stormwater fees throughout the country. And it's a great asset to solve stormwater problems. And like I said, if we don't have one in Westchester, then uh, unfortunately comes out to higher taxes. I work on grant acquisition, so it's not all doom and gloom in municipal government. We go out and shop around our ideas. I've brought in $6 or $7 million in 3 years to offset costs. Grants are great for fun things like stormwater projects, streetscape projects, parks projects. Everyone wants to fund fun stuff. It's a lot harder to write a grant to replace a sewer pipe or something like that. But I work on all our departments. Tomorrow we find out about a $1 million application we submitted last November for a new fire truck for the Westchester Fire Department. Those things cost 1.2, $1.3 million. They're very important. We have several, but the oldest in the fleet is over 20 years old, and it's not always running, so we need a new one. I work on capital project planning and budgeting for all of our departments, making sure we're thinking 3, 5, 10 years down the road and thinking about how to fund things that we need to do. When you get into larger, $100,000 plus projects. I manage a handful of infrastructure related capital projects. We have a stormwater project going on down at Hannum Avenue and sort of like West Washington Street area, not far from the beer mill. That's a landmark that I know pretty well. But we're doing a stream restoration there. Stream was just absolutely all awful, full of fallen trees, car engines, um, stuff like that, mountains of trash. So we go in, we remove all the invasives, brush, any dead or dying trees, clear out the channel completely, regrade the channel, regrade the space around it into a functioning floodplain. Whereas what it was just huge erosion cut banks, and then there's these pockets that would collect water, but like it wouldn't fill up from the stream. It would just sort of funnel to the site and get caught there. So you get mosquitoes and all this stuff. And so now it's going to be this nice wide open space. When we have heavy precipitation events, it will sort of like by intention flood up onto the bank, create sort of a naturalized wetland. But 2 or 3 days after the storm's over, that will start to dry out again. And at the end, we're going to go in and plant 75 new trees and 165 native perennials to just sort of fill up that space and make it ecologically productive. The last thing here is most important. Other duties as assigned. Government is a wild place to work, and every day is different. I did an RFP for elevator maintenance services earlier this month, so whatever the organization needs. When I'm not working, I like to be outside. That's my thing. Even days like today, I just try to be outside as much as possible, move as much as possible, breathe fresh air as much as possible. I couldn't help but put a couple bird pictures in here. I am a very, very amateur photographer. Bought my first half decent camera earlier this year before a trip overseas, and this was the bird that led to me being here. Actually, I'll add a little bit to that story, which the the group was waiting at the entrance and I walked up and I was asked if I was leading the group. And I had no idea
Oh, really?
what group it was. And when I found out that it was you guys, I said, "Oh, that's cool. I saw this bird last week. I'm here to see if I can find it again." And like Lewis said, we went up and found it again. So this was April in the Stroud Preserve. Um, I was in Nova Scotia in September. I don't do bird specific travel yet. I haven't. What takes me out and about really is I grew up surfing and spending most of my summer in Ocean City, New Jersey, and got away for a long time, and then started again maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and a couple of my friends did as well, and so I've been. Um, Also, my wife is from Denver, and so we're always trying to find these places that have oceans, but also like other really fun stuff to do, hiking and mountains and things like that. So, Nova Scotia checked the boxes for us, and um, palm warblers are pretty common, but I just really like that photo. I got to go to Morocco in February. Morocco didn't know this until started planning a trip, but the coastline there in Morocco, I think, is as long as Alaska to Baja. It goes wraps around the Mediterranean and goes, well down into Central Africa. Beautiful country. There's a new direct flight from Newark to Marrakesh. We flew JFK to Casablanca, drove through half the country down to a little surf town called Tagazout. One of the days the surf was not good. We went up into the sort of canyons there. It's very dry. They're getting worse and worse droughts, but found this canyon with an oasis and hiked around for a little bit and um, saw probably 8 or 10 birds that day I never saw before and probably won't again. But gray wagtail was my favorite. If you've ever seen them, I mean, they're aptly named. Their tail is just nonstop. They're just doing this. Yeah. So that was a fun one. Yellow-billed cuckoo earlier this summer. Can't tell you how many times I recorded that before I actually got eyes on it. That felt like I'm not really into like the listing aspects and like counting. I'm a track my lifers, but I'm not really into like the listing part of it. But this one felt good after recording it several times for like 2 years to actually get a clear shot at it. I was lucky enough to go to the Galapagos last April. My wife's grandmother passed away, and she was an amazing woman, and left my wife's parents a little bit of money, and they said, "Let's go blow it on the trip of a lifetime." That's what your grandmother would want. So we did one of the National Geographic cruises for a week. This is a fuzzy video because it's taken from a GoPro. We were snorkeling, and this was the last day. And this guy almost took me out. They zip around so fast. So this is a still from a video, but yeah, it was actually scary. They're so close and so fast, but they're really cute. They're about that big. Um, and locally, I mean, one of the things I love about birding is it just makes you appreciate um, your own backyard. I mean, things like I said, I'm fairly new to birding and um, didn't know such beautiful things existed. This is both these pictures were taken in my backyard in the last couple weeks, and I just love that it can make like any moment really special. Yeah. And I also love when you don't see birds too. It's just sort of a way to connect you to nature. So this was I said it was in Stroud again about 2 weeks ago. I saw this thing on Instagram. I think it was someone giving a tip on how to spot owls, and they said look to the north and look for holes in the trees because those holes will be facing south. And on a day like today, they'll be protected from the wind and they'll get as much sun as possible. It's like a good way to design a house. If you look at an old farmhouse, before we forgot everything we knew about site layout and architecture, when you know you had a fireplace to keep your family warm, people knew how to build houses and they were taking their cues from nature. And so, yeah, even when you don't find the bird, you still have these fun moments in nature. Cute. So anyway, going back to Westchester Borough, like I said, I've been there almost 7 years, but the borough has a long history of sustainability and just thinking about nature and ecology in ways that is not normal in local government. This is a timeline. It does not even begin to capture everything that's going on, but a couple things that I thought were noteworthy. I add to this every year or two, but there was a group in 2006, Bluer Borough Leaders United for Emissions Reductions, really got environmental the environmental movement within the borough government going and established. Diane Herron is a name you might recognize. She was mayor of Westchester and then was in Harrisburg for 2 years. And she was really instrumental in that committee. And she's an she works for energy engineering firm. We've been buying clean energy for a while, adopted a climate action plan in 2010. We've done all sorts of great energy projects, renewable energy projects, supported EVs, electric vehicles from a early point. We had one of the first EV charging stations in really the region in the Chestnut Street garage here. It was actually donated by a BMW dealership down on 202. That's something we continue to expand. All new development except single family homes on lots that are not subdivided or pieced together, like existing lots that have single family homes built on them, which are really kind of rare. It's like one or two a year just because we're so built out. But there's a green building certification specific for Westchester that it's not so much policy, it's meant to give owners and builders a little bit of feedback and a little nudge to build more sustainable buildings. When you talk about our impact on the environment, it really comes down to, in my mind, there's the built environment, there's how we get around, and then it's the things and sustenance that we consume. The clothes, the food, the electronics, things like that. The built environment is a really important one, obviously. 2019, they hired me. Great Lake, Westchester. Just kidding. We've been transitioning our fleet to more and more fuel efficient vehicles, focusing on administrative vehicles because they're the easiest, honestly. It's the low-hanging fruit. Most of our emissions from a fleet point of view come from our police department and our public works department. They're both sort of the final frontier in terms of, when I get to work on them with that in a productive way, that will make my work life complete. But we are chipping away at the edges, the low-hanging fruit, lots of hybrids, lots of electric vehicles. Again, just trying to minimize the impact of our operations driving around in Westchester and globally. Pre-pandemic, we partnered up with a bunch of municipalities in the Westchester area to do a joint energy transition plan, start thinking about how we're really going to move the communities forward. That plan dropped February 2020. And then we all try not to die for a year or so. And truth be told, it's been sort of hard to get back into that. It's probably I always say there's a lot of things that government does really poorly. And the thing we do the absolute worst is collaborate with other municipalities. Like I said, we're very obsessed with these little fiefdoms that we've carved out, and no one actually, like, if you ask people, they might not even know what township they live in, but we're just really focused on it. But to get 5 or 6 municipalities in a region come together and work on something on any scale was pretty cool to see, and we did get some useful guidance out of that plan. We were an early adopter of a single-use plastic ordinance. not being enforced to the degree I would like it to be. And these things it's kind of easy to get complacent about, but whenever I'm on the beach and I look at the high tide line, any waterway, it's like, well, if you don't think there's something we can do to use less plastic, then go out there and look. It's a real it's sad to see, but we're doing a ton of stormwater management. A lot of reasons for that. First of all, Westchester floods like crazy. I mean, we have it's very much a city on the hill topography wise, but then there's some low-lying neighborhoods, as they typically are. Those low-lying neighborhoods, those flood-prone neighborhoods, also tend to be low income. Westchester, is 250, 300-year-old town. But we didn't really have meaningful stormwater regulations on development until probably the early 90s. So suffice to say, we built for 200 years without thinking about that impact on stormwater. And then it wouldn't have been that big of a problem, but then we developed the whole flood plan. So there's no place for a stream to be a stream and flood when you get 5 inches of rain in a day. So we're doing a lot of stormwater for flood mitigation. DEP, Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, also has very ambitious regulations for almost all municipalities with development. There's hundreds and hundreds of municipalities in the state that have what's called a MS4 permit. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. And stormwater quality, there's volume, which is runoff, which creates flooding. And then there's the quality. What is in that? So if it's stormwater runoff off of Stroud Preserve, it's beautiful. There might be some agricultural, fertilizers, things like that runoff. But compared to the borough, where it's, Lord knows what in the gutter, and on our streets. And something that we're really focused on here is eliminating what we call illicit discharge, which is when folks almost always not knowingly they tie in a portion of their sanitary sewer into the storm sewer, which means you got raw sewage flowing into the streams. So we test everywhere that our storm sewer daylights into a stream every year to make sure that it's water and not anything else. But we've found some problems with that over the years and have some more to solve. Um, I talked about our transportation advisory committee, and well, lastly, I got some pictures of. I'll get to our meadow further down the line, but when I talk about sustainability, I love to tell the story of the Chestnut Street Garage, which is a borough-owned facility, because at first glance you're like, come on, it's a parking garage. How exciting could this be? Well, like I said, there are meaningful stormwater regulations on development or redevelopment, and that includes if you build a big building.
There we go.
All right. Um, so this garage has on-site stormwater management. We have energy efficient lighting. We have rooftop solar, bike lockers to encourage people who might be commuting or might just not have a safe place to store a bike if you're living maybe in a apartment building on Gay Street or something like that. Like I said, we had one of the first public EV charging stations in the region, and definitely the first in the borough that's still there. We're adding two more plugs later this month because of high demand. We have signage to tell people how great it is. You pay $1 an hour to charge. That is the equivalent of paying a little bit more than $1 per gallon for gasoline. If you come by on a sunny day when um, that solar is back feeding the grid, it will also fill your car with captured sunlight for a third of the price of gasoline. Um, there's two edges here that we have taken these little unused space and turned into very happy, very vibrant pollinator gardens. Create space for bugs and birds and native plants and things like that. We benchmark all of our facilities for energy. That just means someone, it's me, looks at the bills and puts them into a software that's run by, it's very free, very easy software run by Department of Energy, actually, at the federal level. And that helps us keep track of energy usage over the long term. The whole purpose of benchmarking is normally an organization like the Borough, Pico bill goes to accounts payable, they pay the bill, that's it. And what happens is things change, usually not for the better, and no one notices. That bill just keeps getting paid. So benchmarking is really just forcing a human to look at the bill and saying, did anything crazy happen here? If not, go about your day. But we found something here when in energy benchmarking. This is there's two elevator towers. We're looking at the bills benchmarking. The usage at the facility went up like 50% in 1 year, and it's a lot. It was like 25,000 a year in added costs. Crawled all over that building. Finally, I'm in the electrical room and looking at the massive walls of breakers and everything, and there's these two big double breakers that say elevator shaft heaters. Like, huh, I wonder what those are for. So at the time we had real-time Pico data. We could flip a couple switches, go back to the desk, look at the computer and see if anything changed. So I shut those breakers off. It was a warm day and there's a usage that just went like that. So we basically were heating. Meanwhile, the elevator shafts are basically open to the outside, but at the top there's breaks that you don't want to freeze, or else the elevator won't stop when it goes down. Um, but yeah, we were basically, I mean, they got left on for like a year and a half. And without benchmarking that facility, no one would have ever noticed that. So after that, we got more of a sophisticated energy management system. It was cool. It all came free. Partnered with actually a resident who's on our sustainability advisory committee, works for a company. They have an office in Great Valley, but they're based out of Germany and they run like industrial sensors and software. And they came out, they clipped a bunch of stuff on our panels, and then they built this real-time energy monitoring platform. So that's still there, it's still installed. And like I said, the borough's been buying clean energy for over a decade for all of its facilities. There's different ways you can do that. The more meaningful purchase, the more expensive it is. Honestly, we're doing in terms of, we're doing the most affordable way to buy clean energy. I'll just put it that way. So we're also looking for ways to uh, buy in more meaningful ways. So yeah, all that's happening at one parking garage in Westchester. This is a picture that captures two things. One, happy pollinator garden in the summer. And then that is individual servicing that the inverter for the solar PV system. The inverter changes DC. The panels are DC. Everything else in the world is AC. So you need a box like that to convert that to usable power. That's what the array looks like on top of the garage. Couple other things. Everyone likes pictures. This is example of green stormwater management, like I mentioned. This is what we call a vegetated curb extension. There's all types of these projects, but basically what you do is you take an area that's funneling water, you dig a big hole, you build basically a concrete bathtub, except on the bottom, there's it's basically concrete walls around it, but you dig down really deep. You fill it with what we call amended soil, which is amended, meaning it's not just, dirt out of the ground. It's mixed with generally sand to help with drainage and percolate water back into the ground. And on something like this, that sort of pit can be 4 or 5 feet deep. Then you bring it up close to grade and you fill it with native plants. So you basically build these you'll see on curb lines. We have maybe 10 or 12. We're building maybe two a year. Um, funneling water that would go right down the curb line, right into a drain, from a drain into a bigger pipe, from that pipe dump into a stream. These basically intercept that water, goes into the sort of concrete bathtub without a bottom. A bunch of it goes down, a bunch of it sits there. And if you get a really, really big storm, it'll eventually overflow and just go back to where it would have gone, which is right into the inlet. But these are especially great for that like summer downpour where you get an inch of rain in half an hour. You know, it's a hot July day and the weather breaks. These can really help with flooding. It'll take a lot of these to sort of claw back those centuries of development without stormwater thinking, but we're not going anywhere. And the reason I wanted to include them is, like I said, we fill them with native plants. And this one is over at Veterans Memorial Park on West Washington Street. I just love this, like finding space for nature to be nature. And we'll cultivate it a little bit, but we're really sort of hands off with this. We have a contractor who comes out maybe once a month once they're established just to get trash and debris out, pull out invasives and weed, thing like that, and then, replant if we need to in the spring or the fall. But I just love the idea of having these like little pocket places that will support critters and everything that
Do they have a sign that you're taking care of it from the Borough point?
um not no. We have done signage. The signs tend to disappear, especially in this one, which is adjacent to a playground. And it was funny, this was not fenced in for a while and nothing survived. It just became like a mulch sandbox and kind of felt bad because the kids enjoyed playing in it, but you know, there's a big playground for them, and this was designed and built and paid for with a different purpose. So kind of had to go back in, build a fence, carve it out. But fast forward a year and a half, and this is what it looked like this summer. So um, and here's another one. This is on West Nealt Street, sort of like halfway between Brandywine Street and the campus. Um, if anyone knows Nathaniel Smith, he's a local environmentalist involved with the Westchester Green Team and all around good guy. But that's his house there in the background. And this one we built, and we had, like I said, we have a contractor who came in. And after a couple of years, I was talking to him, and he said, "Can you? I really don't like what the contractor has done. Can you let me take this rain garden over?" And I said, sure, we'll cut it out of the scope, saves us a couple bucks, but I'm going to be watching. And, if it doesn't look good, we're going to have to bring the contractor back out. Fast forward a couple of years, it looks great. The other thing I love about this from a sustainability point of view is this was a intersection with no sidewalk, no pedestrian amenities. So if you're out and about walking in Westchester, walking on a sidewalk versus walking in the street feels a lot different, especially when there's college kids zipping around. So, while we're doing stuff like this, not only does it make the street a little bit narrower, which slows cars down, but we're able to do things like this, build a sidewalk where it doesn't exist, make it ADA friendly. Just makes it easier to get around and invites people to be outside and exercise and things like that. So it's not all about stormwater management. We're creating these little pocket spaces of habitat and ecological productivity and supporting pedestrians and ADA stuff as well. This is one of my favorite pictures from my time here. This is the Goose Creek wastewater treatment plant. So if you are, let me see, east of High Street and south of Biddle Street, and you flush your toilet, this is where it goes. It's down by 202 and Matlack Street. And big site, sprawling, it's probably 15, 18 acres, something like that. And a lot of green space, but it's not really usable. It's a slope site, and anyway, guys down there were mowing it. They were very serious about their mowing.
Mhm.
Um, I think they took great pride in their tractor lines and things like that. But we partnered up with Willistown Conservation Trust to take about 2 or 3 acres and transition it to a wild meadow so that they don't have to mow it anymore. This was actually taken last year, which was the first year. So obviously the Black-Eyed Susans were happy, but we're plan on this diversifying over time. But again, just like it's amazing how much you can cram in. And when I think about sustainability in Westchester, it's doing things like this. And but like I said, there's also time, cost, fuel savings. It's quieter because they're mowing less. There's less emissions from, lawn equipment is totally unregulated. And you've probably all seen statistics about like mowing a 2 or 3 acres is like driving cross country in a passenger car. It's the air pollution from lawn equipment is outrageous. So anything we can do to help. Our latest initiative is we are pursuing a bird town designation from the Audubon Society. This is a fairly new program. It's a municipal certification program. This is a map of municipalities in the area that have been certified. These like there's 5 right here, 3 there, 4 there. So it's popping up all over. I first heard about it on seeing a sign on the road from another municipality that had done it. We weren't sure what we were getting into. This is being run by our Sustainability Advisory Committee, but this is the things that are important to Audubon Society and things you need to show that you're doing as a municipality to get certified. There's all different levels, and we signed up, and our goal is to beat Phoenixville Borough. Um, they were first, but we're going to outscore them. But like I said, like a lot of this stuff we're doing already.
Mhm.
And these programs, there's a lot of programs like this. There's one for trees. I mean, there's a dozen municipal certification programs just in the sustainability space, but they are really good for benchmarking where you are versus your peers. And for us, Phoenixville is our frenemy borough. Just making sure you're still on the cutting edge, but it's also great for just like the exchange of ideas. Like I said, we're not really great at collaborating with other municipalities, but if I want to work on something or have an idea, it's great to have these programs because I can look up the directory, see who's doing what, pick up the phone and say, how did you accomplish this? Um, so where we are right now, we've set up a bird committee. That's one of the requirements of the program. And then we're working through that initial pass of the scoring checklist. The bird committee is run currently, it's 3 person. It'll be myself, the chair of our sustainability advisory committee, and Dr. Ulig from Westchester University. If you haven't met her yet, you should. You should have her speak.
Yeah.
She is running the new bird lab at the university. I think she is a PhD from Cornell and has a bunch of students working underneath her. And we went and met with her. She had a student, they have nests that they have collected, and they're very slowly pulling them apart, twig by twig, leaf by leaf, to find out what is in there that is man-made. They're looking for, plastics and string and fluff and, like all types of things that um, birds are finding that we are discarding and using to make their nests. But she would be a fantastic speaker for you guys. She lives in the borough as well. And all that is new, I think, in the last 2 years or so. So, very cool. Priorities for me moving forward, like I said, bird town certification and showing Phoenixville who the boss is, who the best borough is when it comes to birds. Green stormwater projects. Like I said, we have one going on right now. We basically do one big project every year. We try to fund, like, we have that stormwater fee to help fund those projects, but we try to get grant money for every project before we spend our own dollars on it. Dark skies is something that comes up from time to time. We do have policy on the books. The enforcement has been slack. Honestly, code enforcement is a real challenge for us. It's a tough position to staff. So a lot of things that even having good policy, good code on the books doesn't mean it's getting done. But um, LED lighting is a wonderful thing from an energy efficiency point of view. But now that it's so cheap to leave your lights on and have really bright lights, everyone seems to have them. So it's ironically getting worse as lighting has gotten more efficient. Um, like I said, with this ties into green stormwater management, but I mentioned the pollinator gardens, the meadow, the lawn to meadow conversion we did, just every last space we can, I won't say rewild because there is an aesthetic for um, our green space that we have to maintain. It's never going to just be completely wild, even in, Hoops Park is a very, very large park. We're never going to let it go, but I want to see it as lightly cultivated as possible so people can tell that their parks, their town is cared for, while letting nature do nature. We just finished a Parks and Recreation Open Space Master Plan. It was the first one we've done in over 30 years, and that will help tell us how to expand our parks, to reinvest and sort of rebuild some of the parks that have been neglected, and to have them be more sustainable all around. And I was involved in that process, and my feedback was like, let's take these little like border sections, this periphery, this forgotten space over here, and just not, like I said, not let it go, but let's rip it up. It's just lawn. Let's rip it up and plant 100 perennial shrubs and, check in on it once a year. Um, like I said, energy is really my bread and butter. That's why I started as in the sustainability space. It'll always be my favorite thing to work on. So, continuing to make sure that Westchester, both in the buildings, facilities, and fleet, use as little natural resources as possible. Honestly, environmental impacts aside, that's just good stewardship of tax dollars. If we can buy this car, they do the same thing, but this one, we got to put $500 more in gas in every year, then let's do what's right for taxpayers on that front. To that end, EVs are really important. I mean, there's a lot of controversy and like I've never seen something become so political so quickly. Well, maybe the pandemic, but just the politics around electric vehicles and then like the whiplash with Elon Musk. It's like, wait, do we like these things or not? But and something that working in energy, there's this mantra that all energy usage has impacts. Like even if you're, build this great, off the grid building with solar panels and stuff like that, there's still an environmental impact to doing all that. But there is no debate that electric vehicles have a much smaller environmental impact than business as usual. And much of that impact is, CO2. That's where the big environmental payoff is. So continuing to transition our fleet to EVs. And then, like I said, non-vehicle and mobility. Like, we've had car-focused development for so long. And even in a town that's walkable like Westchester, that new board and commission I mentioned is working on filling the gaps of missing sidewalks throughout the borough. And I lived here for 12 years. I worked here for almost seven. Like missing sidewalks. Where? Well, they mapped them all. And there's hundreds, we call them segments, hundreds of segments of missing sidewalk. A segment could be a block long, or it could be, you know, between two properties where someone ripped up their sidewalk for whatever reason. But there is tens of miles of missing sidewalks in little Westchester Borough. So we're actually scoring them all with this matrix in terms of like, does this connect to existing segments? Is it close to a school or a church or a point of interest, something like that? Is there no sidewalk on the other side? So if we build one here, then at least pedestrians can walk on one side of the street safely. We've done enough investing in making life convenient for cars. We need to go back to getting around the old-fashioned way. That's my opinion. Challenges in my space, funding, of course, red tape. I say that as someone who probably perpetuates a fair share of red tape, but it's really hard to get things accomplished. I was a little hesitant coming from the private sector, taking a job in government, and someone said, "Listen, you're going for your next corporate job after working in government, and you have a resume to lean on for your time in government that shows you can get it done anywhere." Um, but is a challenge. And, just education about all of this stuff is, we get a couple minutes, you're pitching a big idea to borough council, you might have 5 or 10 minutes to talk about it. You got to bring seven decision makers up to the level of education they need to make the right decision. And that's always challenging, not to mention the public. Um, how you can help. I think every presentation likes a call to action. I would say get involved. Local government, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not fun. But it's really, really important. There's all different ways you can do it. I would say bookmark the borough website, look at the agendas, look at the boards and commissions that interest you. Like I said, there are three that are related to sort of environmental issues. And we do surveys and public input processes. There's a ton of that work for the Parks and Rec open space plan. We're gearing up to do the same public input process for some of that pedestrian infrastructure work we're looking to do. Um, Lean on your elected folks. If you can't come to a meeting, that's fine. Send them an email, drop them a call. Um, I have seen two or three people sway big decisions. So don't think that your voice doesn't matter. Um, Outside of this, and again, I'm not, this is sort of stepping outside of my official role as a borough employee, but we all know land conservation is so important. I imagine I'm preaching to the choir in this room, but supporting groups like Natural Lands Trust. Um, all of our big parks in the borough have Friends of Parks groups. There's another group that manages it's sort of a friends of the other parks group, and they're sort of they might be going away actually just because there isn't really enough support to sustain them. But um, the parks group honestly kind of dictates to us. It's funny because we own them, we pay for most of them, but the parks group actually dictates a lot of what goes on in Hoops, Marshall Square, and Everhart Park. Between those parks, there must be 40, 50, 60 acres of green space in the borough just between those three parks. So um, a lot of cool stuff can happen in that space. Rewild your own space at home. And when I, after doing this type of work for so long, like there's sort of, not to put people in groups, but there's people who kind of get it and there's people who don't. And I think the major, like if you could figure out what separates those two groups, it's people who had like meaningful educational outdoor experiences in their lives and people who don't. And I was lucky enough to have one. And my dad is an avid fly fisherman. That's the lens um, he sees the world through. That's taken him all through the world. And I try to like pay that forward. I don't have kids, but I try to pay that forward by Um, when you're out in Stroud Preserve and there's people stop and say, "What are you doing?" And you can say, "Oh, I'm birding," or you can say, "Look at this freaking warbler." Show them pictures. But it's easy to like put on your blinders and go through life and just see like outdoors and nature for just this thing that's over here. But like I said, I think people who grew up like hiking and camping and spending time outdoors and at the beach and in the woods and things like that, those are the people who just like get like the environment for the environment and will be willing to sacrifice a little bit to make the environment a better place. So that's something I try to do as much as possible. And that's all I have for you guys. Thank you.